Hi everyone, this is Hannah. Today I want to talk about director Park Chan-wook's new film, No Other Choice. Venice and Toronto cheered. The world hailed it as a masterpiece. But back home in Korea, the reaction was lukewarm, to say the least. Since its domestic release, the total number of viewers has not even passed 3 million. Compared to Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, which drew 10 million viewers in Korea, this is a dismal box office score. For a director of his fame, Park Chan-wook, this is a shocking scorecard. This new film by Park Chan-wook, No Other Choice, was praised abroad as the pinnacle of aesthetics. But why did it leave Korean audience feeling unpleasant and uncomfortable? Why did the beautiful cinematic experience for the West become a suffocating nightmare for Koreans? Today, I want to look into the obvious of the movie No Other Choice, hidden inside this stark gap in reactions. Director Park Chan-wook's 12th feature film, No Other Choice, stands at a unique and precarious point in his filmography. Based on Donald E. Westlake's novel, The X, this work is a chilling black comedy about the capitalist system following his romance masterpiece, Decision to Leave. The film's global resume is undeniable. Invited to the competition section in Venice, selected as the opener in Busan, and winner of the Audience Award in Toronto. This splendid history proves that this film is at the very center of the global film industry. However, unlike these international achievements, the domestic reaction in Korea is bewilderingly polarized. The film is walking a dangerous tightrope between the praise of being the peak of the Park Chan-wook's aesthetics and the criticism of being an unpleasant and artificial absurdity. Currently, No Other Choice is passing the most important turning point in the Oscar race. Western media predicts it could follow Parasite as the next major Korean hit in North America. At the 83rd Golden Globe Award held on January 11th, it was nominated for 3 major categories, but unfortunately returned empty-handed. Now, all eyes are on the Oscars. Entering the final nomination seems likely, but winning is another story. Judging by the current vibe in the US, I personally predict that PTA's One Battle After Another might take the Best Picture award. Let's look at the title first, because this is where the horror truly begins. The Korean title of the film is 어쩔수가없다. Here, a basic rule of Korean spelling, spacing does not exist. Originally, in Korean grammar, spaces between words create a gap, a space to breathe. But by removing them all, Director Park visually implements a desperate state where there's not a single crack in the situation the protagonist faces. Not even room to breathe is allowed. The tight text represents the psychological pressure and isolation strangling the protagonist. Also, the unspaced phrase approaches us like a proper noun or a firm concept. It reflects the protagonist's self-rationalization. I have no choice. It's not my will, but the situation. It is not just a statement of the situation, but has become a symbol representing the faithful tragedy itself. It is a pity that the English title No Other Choice could not capture this flavor at all. No other choice. Between these 3 words, 2 honest gaps exist. The suffocating density shown by the Korean title, the lump of madness and obsession, has evaporated in translation. If Park's previous works, such as Oldboy and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, were about revenge, No Other Choice is strictly about survivor. The protagonist Yu Man-soo, played by actor Byung-hun, is a paper specialist with 25 years of experience and the archetype of the successful middle class. However, a wave of restructuring shakes his solid paradise to its core. The film defines the capitalist market as a cold zero-sum game. The proposition that for me to live, someone else must die is a role that dominates the entire film. Instead of resisting the system that fired him, Mansu chose the path of stabbing the person next to him to occupy the single chair left by the system. This evokes the concept of homo sacer, a being thrown out of the protection of the law, that is, a life that can be killed without committing a crime. Unemployment does not simply mean loss of income. It is the primary fear of becoming a surplus human whom no one protects. To avoid falling into that position, Mansu voluntarily tries to eliminate others first. The film intricately layers three dramas. Inside the shell of a crime drama, it fills in a family drama, and as its base, a history drama flows. Mansu's house is built on a dark history. His father was a Vietnam War veteran who ended his life by suicide. Mansu commits murder to keep the house, and his son buries stolen iPhones in the yard. The tragedy of these three generations overlaps through the evidence of crimes buried under the house. This is a metaphor implying that the prosperity of modern Korean history was built precariously under someone's sacrifice and death. No other choice. This phrase is the only logic justifying Mansu's crimes. Mansu is not a psychopath. He is just an ordinary citizen who loves his family and has lived diligently. However, he packages his murders as an inevitable choice to protect his family. This reminds us of Hannah Arendt's banality of evil. It is an attitude of hiding behind the excuse of a situation forced by the system, stopping thinking, and mechanically performing evil. Paradoxically, Mansu is incredibly diligent. He investigates competitors, plans routes, and executes murders like a work task. This is the self-exploitation that philosopher Han Byung-chul noted. In a performance society, we whip ourselves saying, I can do it, I must do it. Mansu burns himself up as fuel to succeed. But underlying this active behavior is absolute helplessness that one cannot go against the system. In front of the huge wave of dismissal, instead of uniting or resisting, he chose the way of stepping on colleagues to avoid being swept away. This is a portrait of a sad monster raised by South Korean competitive society. The ending of the movie proves the futility of this attitude. Mansu eliminates competitors and succeeds in re-employment. But in the ending, the factory lights go out one by one. The AI lighting control system, which pursues only efficiency, has activated. Mansu standing alone in the darkness implies that, just like the competitors he removed, he too will soon be removed by the automated system. Unlike the praise from overseas critics, the reaction in Korea was polarized. This is an interesting socio-cultural text. For Korean audiences, middle-aged unemployment and real estate are not simple genre materials. It is the painful reality itself. Western critics cheered for the film's Brechtian distancing, interpreting the exaggerated humor as an aesthetic achievement. To them, Mansu's tragedy is a fable that can be observed from afar. But for Korean audiences, this distancing malfunctioned. As Charlie Chaplin said, life is a tragedy when seen in close-up. For Korean audiences, unemployment and murder on the screen are not a distant story, but a close-up tragedy that fell on their own feet right now. It feels like someone is joking. The Shape of Fire is quite artistic. while my house is burning. That is the reality, the embarrassment felt by Korean audiences. When Westerns analyze Mansu as a specimen of the capitalist system, Koreans see my dad, my husband, or myself in him. Because the psychological distance is too close, satire is likely to be misread as mockery and aesthetic attempts as insult to reality. The cold gauge of an observer that Director Park acquired through overseas activities approached Korean audiences living in a boiling reality as a cold heterogeneity. Director Bong Joon-ho's Parasite and Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice are like fraternal twins. But while Parasite hit 10 million viewers in Korea, No Other Choice stalled at 3 million. Why? First, the difference between vertical war and horizontal civil war. Parasite depicted a conflict between classes, rich versus poor. No Other Choice depicted a horizontal conflict within the middle class. It's a fight between chickens in the same coop. Second, the direction of desire. Parasite was fueled by the desire to rise. No Other Choice starts from the desire to defend, the desperate fight not to fall. Parasite gave us a clear enemy and a strange catharsis. However, No Other Choice steps the uncomfortable truth that I must harm a colleague in a similar situation for me to live. This gives the misanthropy and moral dilemmas instead of catharsis, and stimulate the modern person's prime fear that they can be replaced at any time by AI and automation. Actor Lee Byung-hun proves how the weight of patriarch twists an ordinary human into a monster. Even in the moment of murder, he reveals the fatigue of an office worker instead the tragic beauty of a killer. He acts faithfully as an employee who does anything diligently. The fine tremors in his facial muscles represent the anxiety of our time. Son Ye-jin, playing his wife Miri, shows a rare, bizarre character. Her attitude of condoning her husband's crimes represents the madness of a character whose sense of reality has been castrated. Her theatrical acting adds to the absurdity. The highlight is the brawl between Mansu and couple. The fight for survival hits the peak of absurdity. And the competitor Choi Sun-chul, played by Park Hee-sun, is a mirror image, a carbon copy of Mansu. The process of eliminating him gives off a self-destructive nuance, as if Mansu is killing himself. French philosopher René Girard spoke of Homeric desire, saying, "The most similar the competitor is to me, the more intense the fight becomes." The reason Mansu suffers, particularly when killing Choi Sun-chul, is because it is essentially a terrible act of self-harm, killing his own future. Music is indispensable in Director Park's film. Music director Cho Young-woo uses auditory irony to dominate the sentiment. At the climax, a bloody brawl scene is overlaid with Jo Yong-pil's Red Dragonfly, 고추잠자리 in Korean. The childhood innocence of the lyrics, "Mom, why do I keep waiting?" clashes with the murder scene, creating extreme cognitive dissonance. And Kim Chang-won's Yes, Let's Walk, played during the post-murder cleanup scene, is even more grotesque. A calm folk rock melody placed over the horrific mise-en-scène. This turns the act of burying a corpse into hard labor. To Park Chan-wook, murder is close to overtime work. The audience comes to feel fatigue and pity, not fear from the murderer. Finally, the ending credit song Maureen Murray's Le Badinage is the peak of nihilism. Like the song title A Light Joke, the movie ruthlessly mocks that Mansu's fierce struggle was nothing more than a meaningless joke in front of the huge system and AI capital. Interestingly, the director's moves after the release are unusual. He appeared on various YouTube channels in Korea and actively explained the details of physical murder or hard labor of digging a pit rather than the grand discourse of capitalism critique. This seems like the director volunteered to be a commentator himself in response to the audience's decline in literacy and summary culture. A cynical observer who no longer tries to enlighten the audience. Ultimately, No Other Choice is a confession of fear from the master himself. The fear of Mansu losing his job mirrors the ontological death sentence the director would feel when he can no longer make movies. Especially the AI lightning ending is decisive. The ending, which the director expressed as a huge vain effort, is a nihilistic confession that labor's value is being nullified by technology. Even creators are not free from this threat. When will I not be chosen? That fear permeates the entire film. The unpleasantness Korean audiences felt was not because the movie was bad. It was because the reaction in the mirror was too naked and hideous. Park Chan-wook displayed our hell more elegantly and cruelly than ever. The uncomfortableness faced when leaving the theater is probably because we confirmed our own faces in Mansu's empty eyes on the screen. We are now dancing precariously at the edge of that cliff because we have no other choice. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you like my story, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any thoughts about this movie or Korean society, let me know in the comments down below. Welcome to Hannah's Island. You're safe here now. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.